In this video, I'm going to prove that you don't need to break the bank to build an entire LEGO Star Wars minifigure collection. Now, because terms such as expensive, cheap or entire collection mean different things to different people, let's first set some ground rules. So first of all, in this video we are going to build a collection based on original trilogy as well as prequel trilogy, so 6 movies in total. Everything else would be left for the future videos. For each movie we will limit the number of minifigures to 5, meaning that in the end we will have 30 in total. I will also create a nice display for our collection, and lastly, most important thing, is that I plan to fit all that into $200 budget. That means on average a figure should not exceed $6.6, and if you know anything about LEGO Star Wars, you would know that it's going to be quite a challenge, especially since we would need to get a variety of minifigures from each movie. Important note, all prices are going to be based on last 6-month average used price from bricklink.com, and you will see our budget tracker in the upper left corner. With that said, let's begin the video. Starting off with episode 1, we will take this Queen Amidala minifigure, and we are out of budget. Thank you for watching, goodbye. Just kidding, instead we'll use this Padme minifigure that will cost us $9.5 and first figure secured. I also realized it will be pretty boring if we just took the minifigures, so I'm going to add an accessory to each one of them to make it more interesting. For this Padme minifigure, it was actually pretty tough because she doesn't do anything particularly interesting in this part of the movie, but she does watch young Anakin compete in pod race on these tablet looking things, so I made one for her. Next minifigure is of course going to be young Anakin himself, and this is the most recent version of him from this year's Sith Infiltrator. For him, I will simply add that backpack that he would wear when he was leaving Tatooine with Qui-Gon. Speaking of Qui-Gon, I think we must include him as well, and I chose his newest version from the same set as Anakin. It has this really nice cloth poncho and is pretty cheap for such a detailed minifigure. For him, I will add his lightsaber. Now, I could have taken Darth Maul from the same set as Anakin and Qui-Gon, but for some reason LEGO decided not to give him pupils, and for me it just doesn't look right, so instead I will be using his older version from the Duel on Naboo playset. Funnily enough, it's even slightly cheaper than this new zombie looking variant. For his accessory, I can simply give him dual-bladed lightsaber as he has in the official sets, but instead I will give him a custom lightsaber that I did in my last minifigure upgrade video. Lastly, 5th minifigure from episode 1 is going to be Obi-Wan from the Duel on Naboo set as well. At $5.5, he is the second cheapest minifigure of these 5, and he of course will also get a lightsaber as an accessory. So we've got all 5 episode 1 minifigures for a total of $38, which is pretty good but slightly out of budget. If we wanted to spread 200 evenly, we need to aim for about $33.3 per movie. But even though we exceeded this number, I am really satisfied with the lineup we have for this episode. Moving on to episode 2, and this one is a little more difficult since most of the characters from this movie are crazy expensive. For example, this Anakin is pushing $30, Jango Fett is $34, and Count Dooku is even more expensive at $60. So I had to get creative with my minifigure choices, and the first one was actually in the name of the movie, a clone. This is the latest and the most accurate variant of the Phase 1 clone that came out in this really nice minifigure blister pack. And surprisingly, this clone is quite pricey at $9.1, and also he will be armed with a long blaster. Second minifigure is going to be clone related as well, Ton We, an alien from the planet Kamino, home planet of the clones. This minifigure is incredible and costs only $7.2, I think because the set that it's in is still in production, otherwise it would probably go for much more. For her, I will add this trans blue cylinder, and we can imagine that inside she has a very valuable clone DNA. Next episode 2 minifigure we'll add to our collection is going to be Obi-Wan, which comes from the same set as Ton We, and is a pretty much perfect minifigure, valued at just $4.1. As an accessory, I will add this hologram so he can report back to the Jedi Council his findings regarding these mysterious cloners he found on Kamino. Next minifigure from episode 2 is going to be Super Battle Droid. When I first saw them during Geonosis arena scene, it felt like they were crazy overpowered, but really cool and menacing at the same time, plus it cost only $1.6. Lastly, I want to add young Boba Fett, and I know the perfect accessory we can add to this figure. I know it's probably a little dark to give him his father's severed head, but hey, that's how it was in the movie. And that's our full episode 2 lineup. In total, these 5 minifigures cost $30.5, putting our running total to $68.5. So far, we are doing alright, I think. Now it's episode 3 time, and for this one we absolutely have to include Sith Anakin, and that's the cheapest version I found, selling for almost $20, which is not cheap by any means. With this Anakin we also must include Obi-Wan from the same set, and luckily he's much cheaper. Both minifigures will be equipped with lightsabers of course, and the next minifigure I want to include is Palpatine from the recent Gunship set. And again, he's pretty expensive at around $18, but like Sith Anakin I think he must be included. For him I will also add this Death Star hologram. Following Palpatine, I think it would be cool if we added Mace Windu. Specifically, I like this version of him, and also how can we forget his iconic purple lightsaber. Now, if we weren't on a tight budget, I would consider adding General Grievous, but unfortunately he's way too expensive, and this episode's lineup has already put a huge hole in our budget, so instead we'll add a 212 Clone Trooper with a regular blaster. And this is our complete episode 3 collection. So far, this is the most costly part of our collection, coming at whopping $61.1. Now that we are done with the prequel trilogy, we are moving to the original trilogy, and to balance our budget for episode 4, we have to start with Tatooine Luke, which is pretty cheap, and as an accessory we can include a lightsaber hilt from the scene where he gets it from Obi-Wan. Now, of course, we have to include Obi-Wan himself. This version I think will do just fine. An obvious choice would be again lightsaber, but to spice things up a little, I'll add this droid that he trained Luke with. After Obi-Wan, I think we should include Princess Leia in this very nice outfit, and for her we can include a Death Star plans on a 2x2 tile. Following Leia, another character we cannot forget is a smuggler Han Solo, equipped with a blaster, and it's also super accessible at just $4.5. Lastly, for episode 4, I want to include Darth Vader. This collection would not be complete without him. So far, this is the cheapest part of our collection, at just $27.4. For episode 5, I feel like we should include some characters that were left out from the previous one, such as R2-D2, which I will equip with a third leg, but also Han Solo's companion Chewbacca with his crossbow blaster. Both of them are also very cheap, which is good for our budget. Next minifigure we cannot ignore is Boba Fett, and with his new amazing version available in a cheap mech set, it would be a crime to not include him. For him, I will also add a custom EE3 rifle that I did a while ago. Next, I think it makes sense to include Hoth version of Luke, because it's just an amazing minifigure that sells for only about $3, and if we add a binoculars, it becomes even better. Lastly, for this episode's collection, there is another iconic character that we have to include, and that is Master Yoda, which I will equip with this cane represented by Harry Potter's wand. And this is our complete episode 5 set of figures, which cost us just $25.5. Sadly, that's still too much, because we only have $17.5 left to spend, and that's just not enough. So it feels like we'll have to spend a little extra. Although I'll try my best to stay close to 200. First obvious choice for episode 4 would be Emperor Palpatine with his Force Lightnings. He will cost us $8.2. Following Emperor, it makes sense if we had a Jedi Luke with his lightsaber. By the way, at first I really hated his new hairpiece, but at some point I started to really like it. I think it looks really accurate. Now this next minifigure is not so obvious, but I just really wanted to include it, and that's a General It's a Trap Akbar. And for him, instead of an accessory, I actually built a small command chair, and I think it looks really nice. It's a trap! Another character that was left out from the previous episodes is C-3PO, and I feel like we finally have to add him to the collection. No accessory for him though. Lastly, I want to add an Ewok minifigure armed with this staff. And in total, we spent $30.9 on these 5 characters, putting us $13.4 over the $200 budget. I also previously mentioned that I will be building a stand for our minifigure collection, and the concept I decided to go with was inspired by that. So for all 6 movies, I printed out and cut out a background picture on a thick paper, but also I made 6 small stands like this one, with 5 minifigure slots each. Now all that's left to do is connect everything together and place the minifigures. And this is the end result. Even though we exceeded initial budget and also things such as stands, printed backgrounds and accessories weren't even included in the calculation, I still feel like it's a success. And obviously, if you want to build a similar collection yourself, you don't have to repeat everything, and you can definitely cut a few corners here and there. And that's it for today's video. Thank you for watching, consider subscribing to the channel, and see you in the next one.